Most people think grief is only emotional, but science shows it can literally break your body. Researchers even have a name for it, the widowhood effect, and it can double your risk of dying in the year after losing a spouse. Nobody talks about it, yet it's one of the most predictable health crises in America. And the surprising part, the key to survival isn't in medication, it's in rediscovering yourself before it's too late. Dr. Harper, this is something we have to talk about today because I don't think many people realize grief can be that deadly.
You're right, Susan. The widowhood effect is one of the most consistent findings in medical research, yet it's rarely discussed outside academic circles. When a senior loses their spouse, the shock doesn't just affect the heart emotionally, it affects the heart physically. Cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes, sleep collapses, the immune system weakens, and in some cases, the heart itself literally malfunctions in a condition known as broken heart syndrome. The loss isn't just felt, it's lived in every cell.
That hits hard, David, because I remember when my father died, it was like she aged 10 years and 6 months. She was only 68, but suddenly she had memory lapses, her blood pressure shot up, and she just seemed fragile in a way she never had before. And I kept thinking, this is grief, but now I see it was grief in her body.
Exactly. And your mom's story mirrors what countless studies have shown. In 2022, a large-scale study from the University of Rochester tracked over 40,000 older adults. They found that in the first 3 months after losing a spouse, mortality risk nearly doubled. The reasons were layered: stress hormones, poor nutrition, skipped medications, and most dangerously, the sudden loss of purpose. Because when the person you were caring for, sharing with, or living for disappears, your body almost asks, why continue?
That gives me chills because I remember my mom saying, I don't know who I am without him. And she wasn't just talking about love, she was talking about identity. She'd been a wife for over 40 years. When that role was gone, she didn't know what role to step into.
And that's the hidden crisis, Susan. Most people prepare for the funeral, but very few prepare for the identity shift. The title of wife, husband, partner, it carries not just love, but structure, rhythm, accountability. When that's stripped away, it leaves a void. And unless that void is filled with new meaning, the body starts to shut down. That's why grief isn't just emotional, it's systemic.
And yet nobody warns you. Nobody at the funeral says, watch your health, watch your sleep, watch your sense of self. It's all about condolences, casseroles, and then silence. And in that silence, seniors are at their most vulnerable.
And here's where it gets even more dangerous. That silence often turns into isolation. Research from Harvard in 2023 found that seniors who lost a spouse and then spent more than 6 hours a day alone were 3 times more likely to develop dementia within 5 years. 3 times, Susan. Loneliness doesn't just hurt, it rewires the brain.
That terrifies me because I've seen it. A friend of mine lost her husband, and at first the house was full of people. But by month 3, nobody was dropping by anymore. She told me the hardest part wasn't the funeral, it was the Tuesday afternoons when nobody called, nobody knocked, and she sat there wondering if anyone even remembered she existed.
And that's the widowhood effect in motion. The heart isn't just broken, it's starved of connection, of role, of being needed. And when those disappear, the health spiral begins. But here's the cliffhanger I want listeners to hold on to. We now know ways to interrupt that spiral. Later in this episode, I'll share a surprising set of tools that help seniors not only survive, but rebuild themselves after loss. And some of them are so simple, you can start them today.
That's what I want for our listeners, David. Because right now, I think someone listening is nodding through tears saying, that's me, that's where I am. And the question running through their mind is, how do I go on when half of me is gone?
Yes, and the answer is, going on doesn't mean forgetting. It means transforming. But before we talk about how, I want to take us into a real case study because it shows just how powerful this effect is when ignored and how different the story can be when it's addressed.
I want to hear this because stories are what bring it to life.
This was a woman named Eleanor. She lost her husband of 52 years. At the funeral, she looked strong, but within weeks, she stopped eating well. She missed medications, and her children noticed she repeated herself often. They assumed it was grief. Within a year, she was diagnosed with early dementia. But here's the twist. When her daughter moved her into a senior living center where she was asked to lead a weekly book club, Eleanor started stabilizing. The same woman who was fading became sharp again when she had a role. Her decline slowed. She didn't get over her husband. She rediscovered herself alongside her grief.
That story makes me want to cry, David, because it means even in the middle of loss, there's still a spark left to catch fire again.
And that's what we'll explore in this episode, how to catch that spark. Because grief will come, but losing yourself doesn't have to.
David, Eleanor's story has been echoing in my mind since you shared it, because it shows that grief doesn't just live in the heart, it lives in the whole body. Why does losing a spouse cause such a sharp collapse in health? Why is it so different from other kinds of loss?
It's a powerful question, Susan, and the answer lies in what I'd call the biology of attachment. When you live decades with someone, sharing meals, routines, laughter, even arguments, your nervous system synchronizes with theirs. Your heart rate, your sleep cycles, even your immune system adapt to that partnership. Studies from the University of Arizona in 2021 showed that long-term couples often share similar cortisol rhythms, the stress hormone patterns in the body. So when that person disappears, your body doesn't just feel sad, it's thrown into biological chaos.
So it's like half of your body's rhythm is missing. You're not just grieving in your mind, you're grieving in your cells.
Exactly. And that's what triggers the widowhood effect. Sleep becomes fragmented, appetite changes, immune defenses weaken. One study in psychosomatic medicine in 2022 found that widowed seniors had a 53% higher rate of inflammation markers compared to married peers. Inflammation is the silent driver of everything from heart disease to Alzheimer's. So grief literally accelerates the diseases we fear most.
That explains why my mom suddenly had high blood pressure and memory issues right after my dad passed. It wasn't just bad luck, it was her body reeling from the absence.
Yes. And here's the heartbreaking part. Many seniors blame themselves. They say, I should be stronger, I should be coping better. But what they don't realize is their biology is under siege. It's not weakness, it's wiring. And unless we intervene, that wiring will spiral down.
That's something I wish every senior listening could hear right now. You're not failing. Your body is reacting. And there are ways to stabilize again.
Yes, and I'll reveal some of those stabilizing practices shortly, things that retrain the body and the mind to find a new balance. But before we get to solutions, let's bust a dangerous myth. Many people believe that staying busy is the cure, Friends say, keep yourself distracted, fill your calendar, don't think about it. But distraction isn't healing. It can actually make the biological stress worse.
That surprises me because keeping busy is the first thing everyone says to do. Why doesn't it work?
Because busyness suppresses grief. It doesn't process it. And suppressed grief behaves like suppressed trauma. The brain keeps the stress loop alive, and the body keeps producing cortisol. A 2023 Harvard study showed that widowed seniors who engaged in nonstop distraction activities actually had higher nighttime cortisol and poorer sleep than those who allowed themselves structured grief rituals, things like journaling, talking groups, or simple daily remembrance routines.
So the key isn't to run from grief, it's to walk with it, but in a way that keeps you grounded.
Exactly. Think of grief like a storm. You can't outrun it, but you can learn to stand in it without being blown over. And that's where structured practices come in. Later, I'll share one exercise called the two-chair method that's been clinically proven to reduce grief-related depression in seniors. It's simple, it's at home, and it gives people a way to process without feeling swallowed whole.
I love that you're opening loops for our listeners, David, because I know they're hanging on thinking, tell me what I can do. And before we get to that, I want to ask you this. Why does identity collapse so completely after spousal loss? Why do so many say, I don't know who I am anymore?
That's one of the most painful aspects of widowhood. Over years, identities fuse. We replaces I. The roles you play are intertwined. One might handle the finances, the other the social planning. One cooks, the other drives. When one is gone, the survivor isn't just missing a person, they're missing half of their own identity scaffolding. It's why psychologists call it identity foreclosure. Without intentional rebuilding, the brain struggles to imagine itself as whole again.
That takes me right back to the day after my dad's funeral. My mom stood in the kitchen and I asked her what she wanted for dinner. She just stared at me and said, I don't know how to answer that. He always decided that. It was such a small thing, but it showed me how much of herself she had wrapped into him.
That's exactly the kind of everyday collapse that widows and widowers face. And here's where the danger deepens. When identity weakens, motivation weakens. A study from Columbia University in 2022 found that widowed seniors were 70% more likely to stop taking prescribed medications properly. Not because they didn't care about their health, but because the identity of caring was tied to the spouse. Once that role was gone, self-care quietly eroded.
So it's not just that they're sad, it's that the very reason to take the pill, to eat the meal, to walk the block feels gone.
Yes, and that's why interventions must target identity, not just sadness. Because until seniors find a way to say, I still matter, I still have a role, their health behaviors will continue to slip. Which is why, in just a moment, I'm going to share a powerful story of a widower who nearly gave up until one unexpected responsibility pulled him back to life.
I think our listeners are leaning forward right now, David, because someone out there is living that same silence and asking, is there a way back for me? And you're about to answer that. David, before the break, you left us with a cliffhanger, a widower who nearly gave up until something unexpected pulled him back to life. Can you tell us his story?
Yes, Susan. His name was Robert. He lost his wife after 47 years of marriage. For months, he sank into what he called a shadow life. He barely ate, rarely left the house, and told his daughter he felt invisible. Then, one afternoon, a neighbor knocked and asked if he could watch her dog for a weekend. Robert resisted at first, but he agreed. And something changed. That small dog needed him, feeding, walking, comfort, and in caring for it,
he felt a flicker of responsibility again. Within weeks, Robert had adopted his own rescue dog. 6 months later, his blood pressure was lower, he'd gained back weight he had lost, and his daughter said, "Dad looks like he's back."
So it wasn't therapy or medication, it was a role. He had someone depending on him again.
Exactly. That's what we underestimate. Healing after spousal loss isn't about replacing the person, it's about replacing the role of being needed. And Robert's case matches what we see in research. A 2022 study in Frontiers in Psychology found that widowed seniors who engaged in caregiving roles, whether for pets, grandchildren, or community projects, had a 40% reduction in depressive symptoms and better immune function. Responsibility, it turns out, is medicine.
That brings tears to my eyes because it gives hope. Even in the darkest loss, there's a way to keep living by choosing to still matter.
Yes. And there are practical tools anyone can use. One that has strong research backing is the two-chair method. You set two chairs facing each other. In one, you sit as yourself. In the other, you imagine your spouse. You speak to them, then switch chairs and answer as them. It sounds simple, but in 2021, a study from the University of Texas showed this method reduced prolonged grief symptoms by nearly 60% when practiced weekly. It allows the brain to process the relationship instead of suppressing it.
That's powerful because so many seniors say, "I just want one more conversation." This gives them a safe way to have it while still moving forward.
Exactly. And another practice is building continuing bonds. Instead of trying to let go, you find ways to carry your spouse with you. That might be cooking their favorite recipe, keeping a tradition alive, or even saying out loud, "This is for you." Research in the Journal of Aging Studies in 2023 found that seniors who created continuing bonds had lower levels of depression and stronger physical resilience than those who tried to erase reminders.
That reminds me of my mom. After my dad passed, she kept making his Sunday pancakes. At first, I thought it was sad, but now I see it was her way of keeping him close while still living.
Exactly. And that's the distinction. We don't move on, we move with. And that mindset shift saves lives.
Can you talk about doctors' offices, David? Because I know many widows and widowers feel dismissed when they mention grief. How can they get their doctors to really hear them?
This is where a script helps. When you see your doctor, try starting with this: "My grief is affecting my health, and I need you to help me protect myself physically as I recover emotionally." Then give one clear example. "Since my spouse died, I can't sleep, and now my blood pressure is higher." That signals to your doctor that this isn't just sadness, it's a medical concern. It forces them to connect the dots.
That's so important because otherwise grief gets brushed off when it's really a frontline health risk.
Yes. And I'd add, bring someone with you if you can. A child, a friend. Having another voice in the room increases the chance your concerns are taken seriously. It forces them to connect the... Research from Johns Hopkins in 2023 showed seniors accompanied to appointments had 35% better outcomes simply because doctors were more attentive when family was present.
That's such a practical, doable tip. And it reminds me, healing doesn't mean doing it alone. It means letting people in, even when you feel like shutting the world out.
Exactly. And here's the hope I want to leave with listeners. Losing a spouse will always change you, but it doesn't have to end you. With support, rituals, roles, and open conversations, you can grieve and still rebuild the self worth living.
And that's the heart of today's message. Losing a spouse doesn't mean losing yourself. You are still here, you are still needed, and the world still has a place for your love, your wisdom, your presence. David, thank you for guiding us through such a tender but vital conversation.
Thank you, Susan. It's an honor to bring light into such a difficult subject.
And remember, you don't have to face this journey alone. Stick with us because we post daily, and every day brings a new conversation to help you stay stronger, healthier, and more hopeful.